Oh no, so many muted. Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Gosh. Always do that. Hello. Delayed. Uh, cool. Well, everyone, welcome to this week's Rive workshop. Today, as you might have guessed, we are building a weather app in React Native using the Rive React Native runtime. And we're going to see some awesome design assets as well from our creator relations team. Wanted to give y'all a kind of preview of what this looks like. So just if you look here, we're going to be working off the iOS simulator today for the demo, but it's a pretty basic app. It shows the city that we're going to look at weather for, the current forecast, and then you can scroll through the current days, like hourly forecasts, and see the weather at a given hour and see that happening there. So we'll go dive into that code in a bit, but before we do that, let's hand it off to Michael and Robert, who are going to talk about some of the cool design assets that you'll see in this workshop.
All right. Thank you, Zach. Let's go ahead and take a look at the design that Zach is going to be working with to implement this weather app. So this was a project that I think we talked about a few months ago and finally got some time to put something together. And I'm really excited about how it turned out. So let's jump into, I'm going to jump into the state machine and then kind of go over some of the elements and inputs that are being used. So if we go ahead and play this, looking at the inputs, there's this time input that kind of just tracks through the time of the day. And there's a couple animations that have some keys set, and it's just blending between those two as you progress through this little number counter. There's also a cloudy toggle. So, if it's cloudy wherever you're at, then you'll see some clouds. Then there's rain. And then down here, just a UI element, there's this little is open toggle that opens and closes this overlay where a lot of the data can be drawn. One thing to note is that excuse me, all of these are on separate layers so that they can be combined. So, the rain loop here can be going the same time as the clouds. So that allows you to kind of add, so you could have snow, you could have all sorts that you could add like wind effects, and those could all be layered, and you could turn them all on or, turn some on and some off based on the weather at the specific location. So yeah, that's kind of just an overview of how this file is set up. And I think the most important thing is just to note is these inputs, because for cloudy, and Robert will show you, like, you could do a number of things, but as long as it's cloudy, the cloudy state is being set by this Boolean, you can kind of do whatever. And your dev, in this case, Zach, will be able to just pull that and utilize that toggle. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Robert, and he can show you the design that he worked on.
Yeah, so Michael actually made this really easy. So all I really needed to do was I copied his artboard over here and essentially used his state machine to get started. I've made some changes, like our time doesn't necessarily work the same. He's using a blend state, and I'm using different times of day animation. So I've got the nighttime, and then that progresses into the morning, afternoon, and evening. So it doesn't blend together like his does, but I figure when you open your app, you're rarely ever going to see the time of day shift. And we can also, just like with his, I've got the cloudy toggle, so it can be cloudy at any point during the day. It can also be rainy at any point during the day. And our little squirrel friend hides out in the tree whenever it's raining. And then the same is open toggle down at the bottom. I think everything else is set up fairly similar. The great thing was that I could make any changes to the state machine that I wanted. And because we kept our inputs the same, I could lay things out how I thought that they would work best for, what I was trying to build. And again, we just, everything is on its own layer. So I could add in the squirrel at any time. I could have added in, deer or, birds flying around in the background, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, the copying gave me a good starting point, and yeah, I just iterated on it from there. And then from there, I was just like, all right, Zach, take it over and do your thing.
Yeah, it was really cool to try and riff off some of the ideas that we had for this. Like, oh, what if it's like raining and cloudy? And like the weather API that you'll see later, we had so much data that we could play with, like wind miles per hour and snow and all these things. And it's like, okay, we have to really pare it down because we could get this really out of hand quickly. So yeah, this was a super fun project. Cool. So I'll go ahead and share my screen now. All right, so hopefully this is kind of visible to everyone, but just some housekeeping things to start off with. You'll find in the YouTube description box below the links to both the source code for the project as well as the Rive community asset. So feel free to take a look at those if you want to check out the code. In the repo, we've open sourced this. It's called Weather App Mobile. There's 2 folders here. We're going to be working in Bear Weather App, which is basically the skeleton project for this React Native project. Excuse me. And then there's also Weather App, which is the completed version with all the Weather App logic and Rive integration and all that stuff. So if you want to code along, feel free to pull down the project and check out the Bear Weather App. There's a bunch of to-do comments in the source code where we'll be filling in some blanks. Or if you just want to check out the final product, check out that Weather App folder. And again, we are working with the React Native runtime today to integrate Rive files into our projects. But just as a refresher, there are a number of different runtimes that Rive has, where you can bring your Rive files and animations into a number of different platforms. So the last workshop 2 weeks ago, we used the Flutter runtime to build a small game. But there's also iOS, Android, React, Web, a bunch of other ones, and we're continuing to put out more. So stay tuned on that front. You can find this at help.rive.app. This is our kind of documentation center for all things on how to use Rive from a design perspective in the editor, as well as the runtime perspective for looking at the APIs and such. But yeah, if you go into the runtimes library section and click on React Native, you'll see this kind of overview page of how to get started pretty quickly. And then to get Rive assets into the project, you're going to go into this Rive file, download for the newest runtime, and then I'm going to drag over my Xcode project. If you look in the Bear Weather app, you'll see this iOS folder with the Xcode project here. If you open that up in Xcode, we want to add an assets folder and drag and drop that weather app.riv file into the assets and add that to our target. So that's how we add the assets to our asset bundle. And you would do something similar if you were working with Android too. Cool. So that's just some little housekeeping things. If you go into the Bear Weather app, you'll notice that a lot of this scaffolding project is auto-generated, but the bulk of the project is going to be in this app.js file. This houses a lot of the logic for where we're going to pull in the weather API data and integrate Rive as well. And you'll notice that a lot of this is already filled in. This is intentional for the purposes of this workshop, so we don't have to spend too much time fussing around with styles and the placement of UI components and such, because that could take quite a while. So we're going to pare things down and just focus mainly on the Rive integration and the API integration as well. Now, if you're familiar with React or React Native, a lot of the syntax will seem familiar. This kind of does assume that you have a little bit working knowledge of JavaScript and how React works. But if not, feel free to check out the React or React Native documentation to understand things like use state, hooks, and all the like. We have some state variables here for tracking things such as the city search. So when you're searching for a city, This is, by the way, the bare weather app in its bare bones when you start running it. We have a state variable for the city that we're going to pull weather from. We have this state variable is loading data for telling whether or not we're loading data in or finished. A state variable for weather data when we pull in the weather data, so we have a place to pull from. And then we have this highlighted time state variable, which is going to, if you remember, we had that scrolling view of hours. And when we click on an hour, we want to highlight that forecast. And so we're going to store the state for that specific hour in this highlighted time variable. And then we have a number of kind of skeleton functions here where we'll fill in the blanks. There's like getting the weather data. There's some here that's already filled out, like getting city data as we're searching for new cities. And then the actual part where we build the UI is this return statement where we're using a bunch of React Native components from their library to fill in a lot of the blanks here. For example, filling in the city, the forecast, and then building that scroll view of the hours and forecasts there. So again, we don't want to fuss along with all those minor details. In your own time, you can check out some of the styles here and how some of the UI was placed to get a better understanding of the fuller picture of this. So anyway, that's just an overview of what we're going to be building, where we're going to be building. So where I want to start is taking a look at integrating Rive. So if we go back to our React Native docs, you'll see the first step is to npm or yarn install the Rive React Native library. So this is our runtime library. It's open source. You can check out the repo. There's a link at the below here. In both of these projects, they're already included in the package JSON, so we don't have to npm install them here. So let's start with importing the Rive component, as you can see in step 3. This is what we're going to render out. Rive React Native. Cool. And in order to get fuller functionality into the API, such as setting inputs for those state machines that you saw in Michael and Robert's state machine, we are going to create a ref. You'll see in the state machine docs here, if you look in the React Native tab, we have to use a ref into this Rive component in order to get fuller functionality to control the Rive component API. So I'm going to create a ref here. And again, if you're not familiar with a ref, you can check out the React docs for that. So I'm just going to create Rive ref is equal to use ref. And we'll set that in a bit. Now I'm going to go down into our UI render return statement, take out this to do, and I'm going to place that Rive component that we just imported. And so if you look in the docs here, we have a number of props that you can set on this component for a lot of configuration. I won't go into all of them, but I'll go into some of them that we're going to set. So we're going to work with the resource name. This is how we set the Rive file into our Rive component, basically associating that Rive file that we put in that iOS bundle into our app. And this is just a string. It takes a string of the Rive file without the .riv extension. So for us, this is just weather app. The other thing I want to set is the artboard name. And this is going to be the name of the artboard we want to show. For now, let's start with Michael's. So we'll find the artboard name in the editor here. Michael's is Proto1, Robert's is Proto2. So I'm going to do Proto1. I also want to set up the state machine name. You can find that state machine name in the animations tab here. So this is state machine 1. I'm also going to set the auto play. This is regular case. And this is basically going to say, hey, kick off the state machine as soon as this Rive component renders and I load in the Rive file. I added some styles below for this component, so I'm just going to add that there. 2 more things here. I want to set the ref for this Rive component. Again, the ref is basically the gateway into tapping into further functionality for the Rive component. If you're simply just showing off a state machine with, for example, listeners that you don't need to make like control inputs with code, all you really need is this Rive component. You don't need that ref. Or if you have a simple animation, same idea. But if you want to control the inputs and things like that, you want to have that ref available. So I'm going to set Rive ref here. And then the last thing I want to set is fit. You can read more about fit and layout options in our docs. Basically, I want to make it so that the canvas of the Rive component takes up the entire height of the view. So in order to do that, I'm going to set fit is equal to fit.fit height. And this fit that I it auto imported, thanks VS Code, is from the Rive React Native library. Cool. So if I go ahead and save that, I got an error. Oh, I always do this. Syntax. Cool. All right. So I've got Michael's kind of base animation here in the default state. It's kicking off the state machine. We're not doing anything with it yet. And obviously, we're not loading in weather data. But we got the canvas to be expanding to the full height of the screen. So it's looking a little more interesting. Sweet. All right. So now we're going to look into integrating the weather API so we can actually get data on the screen. So some background here. There's a ton of weather APIs out there from a bunch of different companies. On a quick search, I looked for the one that gave me the most data for a free tier. And so I looked at weatherapi.com. It's pretty extensive and you can get a bunch for a free tier. So just went with this, but you could really go with whatever you want. In order to actually call into this API, for example, if you're following along here, you'll want to create an account with them because when you create an account, you'll get a weather API key. And you're going to send in this key every time you make a request to this API so that you can get authenticated and get data back. And so once you get that weather API key from their portal, you can set it in a .env file. I won't show you mine, but you can set one here. And it'll look something similar to this. So weather API key is equal to whatever you set here. And in this project, I set up a dependency so that you could basically import that environment variable into your code and use that accordingly. So anyway, just some setup around that. By the way, the weather API has a bunch of documentation on a number of APIs. We're going to be looking at the forecast API mainly. So if I go down to this get weather data function, you'll see here it's taking in a city, and this is where I'm actually going to call in this API. And this get weather data is called from this use effect. Basically, for those of you not really familiar with this pattern, once this component loads, this app.js component, it's going to call into this use effect. And every time this city changes, we're going to call get weather data. And city is going to change, like, for example, when I change a city here and search for a different city, we'll refetch the weather API to get new data. Sweet. So in this get weather data, I'm going to be passed in a city, and I have this try catch block already kind of set up here. So let's call in this API. I'm going to set data equal to await. I'm going to use the fetch API. I'm going to pull in the API URL here. The docs go over this, but basically this is the base URL of the API that you'll hit for this this service. And then the last part of the path is the actual API you want to hit. So for forecast API, it's forecast.json. You'll see below when we want to search for different cities and get city location data, we can use the autocomplete API, which is search.json. So have a look at their docs to learn more about the requests and responses on that. Now I mentioned we want to send some other parts of the, we want to add more to the request. This is just a GET request, by the way. And so we can add more query parameters to this, basically to give more context into what we want from this API. So the first thing is the key. The key is where we'll add that weather API key that we import. So going to add that weather API key variable, which is pulling from my env file. And then I'm also going to set q is equal to, which is the query. I want to search for the city. And since we're being passed in the city, I'm just going to use that variable here. And then one other query parameter I want to look at is the days. Because we're only showing an hourly forecast for the current day, we're just going to say days is equal to 1. So we're only getting 1 day of data. And that's pretty much all you need to construct the API request here. I'm going to JSONify that. I actually don't know if that's a word. So I just made it one. Oh wait, data.json. Yeah. And then I'm going to, I have this, if you recall, I have this state variable for when I fetch the data. I want to have a state variable so I can reference it throughout the app. So I'm going to store that data in this weather data state variable. Set weather data to JSON data. Sweet. All right. Now, if I look at the app, by the way, you run the app through a Metro server, and every time you save, it auto restarts the app, so it's pretty convenient. And you'll notice that. So here I'm pulling in that weather API data. I've got the current forecast. I'm currently from Chicago, so that's going to be the default here. And you can see for each hour, we get the hourly forecast in Fahrenheit and Celsius. And as I click on each of these rows, it's updating this kind of like hero forecast. So you can see like, oh, at 12 p.m., it's 83 degrees. So that's exciting. We've got kind of basically the core of our application here, functionality-wise. As I'm clicking through these, you can see everything updating, at least for our demo app. And of course, you can make this extensible. The API has ways to search for like a 7-day forecast. And I think it has paid tier, so you can get even more flexibility. So there's a lot to play with. I won't go into it, but take a look. It's pretty fun. Sweet. All right. So that's kind of like how we integrated the weather API. Now let's go back and, or actually you'll see here as I'm updating the time, it's not actually updating the animated background. As you saw in Michael's state machine, if I go back here, as we messed with the time, you'll see like the shadow changes, the sun is shifting positions, and you've got this kind of blend state that's changing along with the day. And I forgot if you mentioned this, Michael. This is a range from 0 to 23 on a 24-hour schedule. So we want to be able to have our app do the same and react accordingly. So that's kind of what we're all here for, right? So let's go back to our get weather data. And as soon as we fetch the data, let's start setting some of these inputs from the state machine so that we can actually advance the state machine through the API response. And so if you recall, I created that Rivref. I associated it to the Rive component that's rendered. So this Rivref now holds a reference to the inner API of this Rive component. And now if I go back to get weather data, I'm going to set input states on the state machine. So if you look back into the docs, there's a sub-tab here called Rivref Methods. Basically, with that ref, you have the ability to play animations, play state machines, pause things. And in our case, we want to look at this set input state. This is where we set the input value for the state machine. And you'll notice it takes 3 different parameters: a state machine name, the input name that we want to set in the state machine, and then the value that we want to set on that input. So let's start looking at, for example, the cloudy property. Again, cloudy is a Boolean input here. And so we are going to set that. So rivref.current, you get access to the API. And now we're going to take that set input state. And again, we have three parameters we need to provide it. The first is state machine name. Excuse me. I'm actually going to be reusing the state machine a lot. State machine name. So I'm going to create a constant up here. State machine name is equal to state machine 1. Sweet. All right. And now, again, I want to work with the cloudy input. Now, the third thing we need is the value. So the value in this case is a Boolean. If we look into the weather API data response that comes back, I'm going to look at the current, which is just the current forecast. This is the current object. Again, you'll see it supplies us with an amplitude of data. This is the current property that we want to look for, though, cloud. And sorry, just to zoom in here, it might be a bit small. Cloud is represented as a number. With the weather API.com's documentation, this is basically a percentage from like 0 to 100 that shows off like the percentage of cloud coverage over a given hour. And so we need to figure out a way to make this number be a Boolean value for our state machine input. So for the purposes of this demo, let's just say that if cloud coverage is greater than 20%, then it's going to be cloudy in our animation. So we'll take JSON data dot, I'm going to again, I'm taking that current object dot cloudy, cloud, and say if it's greater than or equal to 20, it's going to be a Boolean value that's going to determine that cloudy input in the state machine. So now let's go into the rainy input and do the same thing. So rivref.current.set input state. Set the state machine name. The input name we want to set is rainy. And then the value for rain. Now, in the current object, rain, I think, is represented as precipitation. So you can see here that it has two values, precipitation in millimeters or inches. For this demo, let's just work with precip mm in milliliters. And this is pretty self-explanatory. It's a number based on how many milliliters of precipitation it expects. So let's just say if it's greater than 1, we can make that a Boolean because, again, rainy is a Boolean. So let's do JSON data.current dot, what is it? Precip mm is greater than or equal to 1. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Sweet. And what else do I want to do? I also have this time property, this input, which is a number. Again, this is kind of representing the hour of the day. Let's just say, oh, actually, I want to do one more thing here. I don't want to do this all the time. I want to do it if, I don't want to set the input for cloudy and rainy in this method every time. I want to do it if weather data is not set yet. So basically, the first time I call into this API, let's set those state machine inputs. And you'll see why in a bit doing this. At the same time, I also want to check if highlighted time is undefined. So again, the very first time we're running this or calling this function, I want to set this time input basically to the value of the local current hour. So I can use, if you look up in part of this forecast response, it has this location object, and it has this local time epoch property, which gives a number of milliseconds. So I'm going to use that in addition to the JavaScript date API to get the current hour. You can look on like MDN JS docs to see how to use that date API. But I'm going to create a local variable here. Local time hours is a new date. I'm going to pull that JSON data dot location and then local time epoch property. Multiply that by 1,000 and then do get hours. So I can get the hours from 0 to 23. I'm going to set the highlighted time in that state variable. Then I also want to set this time input. So I'm going to do rivref current dot set input state. Again, 3 things here. State machine name. The input name I want to set is time. And then I want to set the value that we're going to use. So that's local time hours. Cool. So now we've set 3 inputs here on our state machine. We have one left, which is open. And again, this is pretty much a property that toggles this box here. This will kind of act as like a container visually for our scroll list to show all the hourly forecasts. And if you look at this use effect function here, oh wait, no, not that one, is loading data. It's got this dependency on is loading data. So by default, this is set to true. So once this component loads, it's assumed that it's going to load in the weather API. But once everything is loaded in from the weather API in weather data, you'll see that we're setting it to false. So let's go to that use effect. Where are you? Here. And say if not is loading data. So once we're done loading data and we have a rivref object, let's go ahead and set that is open property here. So rivref.current.set input state machine name, the name of the input, which is open. And this is a Boolean as well. So in this case, since the data has loaded, we just want to set it to true so that the box opens. All right. Now, if I, where's my simulator? Open this, you'll see that, okay, we've got a different animated background because currently in Chicago, it is cloudy probably. I don't know, my curtain's closed. And so you can see that we set the input state on the state machine as soon as the data loaded in, and it changed the animation accordingly. And it set the time too, so it's not sunny anymore. We don't see any kind of shadow or sun. And so cool, we've kind of set a number of different inputs here, and we've got that is open, so the container is open as well. But there's one part that's missing here, which is as we're changing times, we're not actually updating the animated background, which is probably the more exciting part of this demo. So we have to do one more thing here. Each of these rows, by the way, if you go into the return method, we're iterating over each hourly forecast. It's a touchable highlight component, which is a component provided by React Native. And then we've kind of styled it to be a little opaque here. We have this on press prop that we pass in, and we basically pass it this on hour callback. So every time one of these hour boxes is pressed, we're calling this on hour click with that current hour's data. So when I click 5 p.m., it's sending the data blob for this given hour. And you can see here in the API, we've got this hour array, and there's 24 items in there. So each time we're clicking on a row, we're getting this blob of data into this callback on our click. And you'll see that there's already some things fleshed out here. We're setting basically the new hour, had to do some funky math based on, or not math, some parsing based on the response they gave us. And we're setting that highlighted time. So here is where we're actually going to set the new inputs on the state machine, the new input values on the state machine based on the hour that we clicked. And so we're going to do something very similar to what we did up here in get weather data, where we set the cloudy, the rainy, the time input. But now we're going to do it with a new data set, and it's going to be the data set based on the hour that the user clicked. So again, we're going to do our little dance of rivref.current.set input state. And man, this is pretty repetitive. We probably could have turned this into a reusable utility method. That would be good to add for the demo. So anyway, not going to because that's fine. I'm going to set the cloudy input, I think. Yeah, cloudy. And we're going to use the same logic. Basically, if the cloud properties value is, if it has more than 20% cloud coverage, we'll turn that into, we'll say that cloudy is going to be true. So we're going to take that hour data that's passed in and set cloud is greater than or equal to 20%. Same thing with rivref.current. We're going to set the rainy input now. So state machine name, rainy. And actually for the hourly data, interestingly, we get more properties. And so in here, we actually get this property called will it rain. This is a number, and it's 1 if it's like, yes, it will rain, or it's likely to rain, because weather is never accurate. And it's 0 if it's not likely to rain. And so that's pretty much a Boolean. So we're just going to force that into a Boolean here. So we'll do our data dot will it rain. Force that into a Boolean. Sweet. And then one last input we want to set is the time input here. And so we'll do that with our new time that we calculated from new highlighted hour. So rivref.current.set input state. State machine name. The time input is what we want to set, and the value will be the new highlighted hour, which is the hour that the user clicked. All right. Now, if I save that and look at the forecast, cool. Now we've got an animated background that's changing according to the hour. You'll see that the sun is shifting, the shadow shifts as I click through the different hours of the day. And I don't know if there'll be any more interesting ones. I know there was a cool rainy animation in clouds that you had, Michael. Okay, there's a cloudy animation. I want to show off rain. What's a rainy city? Probably like Anchorage? Maybe. There we go. Okay, cool. We've got that rain animation. I guess at 7 p.m., maybe it'll rain in Anchorage, Alaska. So we're showing that off. And you can see, again, this is all driven by the data provided by that weather API. So you can see kind of the correlated interactive content here. Sweet. So that's pretty much our app that we wanted to build today. There is one last thing I wanted to show off, and that is Robert's what do you call it? Robert's design asset for this weather app. So he showed it off a bit earlier. It's pretty much the same concept, different design, but the state machine is all the same. So the state machine name you can see is the same, and all the inputs are the same. The animations might be a little different, but that's okay, because from a dev perspective, as you saw, we're only tapping into the inputs and specifying the state machine name here. And so if I wanted to play Robert's artboard, weather app and have his background, I'm going to just change this artboard name from Proto 1 to Robert's artboard, which is Proto 2. And you can see here, wow, okay, we changed the whole background of this app, and it correlated accordingly. There's some funkiness here. I have to figure that out. But you can see that it's changing. It's the same thing. We're changing the time input. It's changing the background here. It's got some clouds, changing with the time of day. I think there's like some cool sunsetty one. Anyway, oh yeah, here's another day one. But anyway, you could see the usefulness of this, hopefully. Like, say you were trying to, if I wanted to A/B test this with like different users, I could have some kind of feature flag management system in this application and kind of A/B test this artboard name. You saw I was only changing one line to see which experience resonated better with users. And so that's one kind of idea that you could use here. And yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to show off today. If you wanted to follow along with the completed version, which has a little bit cleaner of a code base, you can check out this weather app folder here and run that. You might need to go through the React Native docs setup. There's a bit of things you need to install there to get things properly. But yeah, this was super fun. I don't work in React Native often, but after working a few weeks ago with Flutter, figured we'd give it a try with another cross-platform kind of framework. And so yeah, you can run this in iOS, Android. Forget what all React Native really runs on, but yeah, another cross-platform development thing. If you've worked with React and not React Native, it's pretty similar. There are very similar things that kind of go on here. The styles are a little interesting. Some things kind of differ, and some styles don't play well in certain platforms, like Android versus iOS. And so you just kind of have to be wary of that. But yeah, this was super fun to build. And hopefully, you can see kind of the power of, driving state machines. That usually we should kind of show it through like user-driven interactions, like clicking or hovering. And in this case, we're doing it through API-driven kind of concepts. So really another way that you can use state machines, drive inputs in your applications, and have it pretty subtle. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. If it was, comment below. Or if you have suggestions on things that you'd like to see, also please note that as well. But I'm going to stop sharing, and I think we are good now. So I think we can probably move on to the Q&A portion. What do y'all think?
I think it's as good a time as any.
Sweet.
All right, so our first question is from Sunflare. Do you have a light and dark mode? Do you want to take that one, Zach? You look like you want to.
Oh,
do it.
So the React Native does have a way to tap into the device's light and dark mode. I did not use that in this demo, but if you check out their docs, they have, or even if you create like a starter template for React Native, it doesn't have to be in this project. I think they include an example of showing how to tap into like the is dark mode or is light mode and how to have that Boolean. In this project, we don't. But Robert, what were we going to say?
Oh, wow. Your answer was way better than mine, because I was going to say, like, yeah, you just have to build a light and dark mode in your animations. But if you could just do that through code, like, hey, skip some steps.
There, yeah. I mean, that could also be like an input that we set on the state machine. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to have it, directly within the canvas itself, yeah, might be interesting there.
All right, we got another question from Deckard76. Took a look at the runtimes page that has interactive samples. These are amazing. Hey, thanks. Cool. Do they work like Lottie files to integrate into websites?
It's similar. So actually what you saw today is very similar to how you would integrate it into a website. There are a few different ways to do that. So we have docs on plain JS. So if you're just using plain old HTML and JavaScript, we have a web runtime where you basically just create a new JavaScript object. Actually, I could show that really quick.
There's also, just real quick, there's also Framer integration. So you can generate share links and drop them right into Framer or Webflow. And yeah, so I think there's some documentation on the Framer stuff too.
Yes, totally good call. I think we have some stuff on our documentation site, probably in share links. But yeah, with web, it's simple. As long as you include the script for the library, you just import this one object here from, sorry, you can do either or. You can include the script tag, or you could npm install the module into your application, and then set a canvas element. And then this is really all you need. We're creating a new Rive object that you specify the name of the Rive file. So I think this is similar to what Lottie does. Specify the canvas where you want to insert your animation. And then there's more configuration from there. So hopefully that was helpful. There's something very similar for like React, and you can use the plain web runtime for if you have like a Vue app or an Angular app, things like that.
Sweet. Let's see. Got a question here that I'm pretty sure is specific to the code that you wrote. Is that question mark on line 59 intentional?
Let me see where line 59 is. Line 59.
I think it's there.
Oh, yes.
60.
Wait. It's an exclamation point. You might be talking about this one, this question mark. Yes. So basically, because we set it to null originally, this useRef, we set Rivref to be on the Rive component, but like at this time, like when it's trying to compile, like it doesn't really know whether or not this thing is populated and it's a valid like API object. And so we do the question mark to be like, hey, basically if we were working in like TypeScript or a really strict linter, it would complain because it's like, this could be null and you're trying to invoke a function on rivref.current. So you would add a question mark to be like, well, if it is available, call the method. If it's not, don't. So yes, that is intentional.
Sweet. Do you have seasonal changes, such as 5 p.m. in summer is day, but in winter it's night? Or would that be too much? We don't have that, but we definitely could have made it. And I think, oh man, the state machine for this would be, it would be interesting because I feel like you'd have to have 4 states. So you have what? Summer, fall, spring, winter. And then from those 4 states, you have each time a day. So the first thing that your state machine would check for is what season is it in. And then let's say it's in summer. So boom, it goes to your summer animation. And then from there, it can get from, morning, evening, night. And those are all set to the times you want. And then let's say it's in winter. Well, it'll go into winter and you can adjust your times to go to the different times of day accordingly. You can also have another layer that adds in new artwork. Let's say it just toggles on and off your different artwork. So in summer, it can be, lush and look hot, but in the spring, it can be like, there's just flowers, winter, you can have snow and stuff like that. So it's totally doable. You just have to sort of think to the state machine and how you'd want to add that. All right. Another question. Does the Rive team have any plans to create components on the fly in the application, like procedural components and their state machine that can be created or destroyed using code? Interesting.
Yeah, good question. There is something like this. It's not well documented yet because it's still kind of, we will definitely add documentation on this. For web, there is we call it like a low-level API where you're building your own render loop. And essentially, this is stuff that's abstracted behind the high level API. So that stuff that I showed on how to integrate Rive, it's doing all that stuff that I'm talking about right now, but just behind a really high level object. Basically what you would do is create instances of like your artboard and your animations and your state machines, whatever you might be having. And you can create instances of like many artboards, for example. Say you had like an artboard that just showed an apple, and you wanted to dynamically create multiple of them. You could do this by building your own render loop, creating multiple instances of those, and building your own render loop such that you advance the state, you advance your animations based on however fast or slow you need it, and you kind of coordinate like what happens in that sense. It is still, it's a bit in flux, but we will definitely get documentation up very soon on how to do this with all our runtimes. But it definitely is possible. Yes, the idea is that we want as much control, like we want to give as much control on the dev side as possible, so that like you can do things like this, create custom components, do hit detection, things like that. So stay tuned for more on that. Great question.
Great answer. All right, so we've got a small question. What do I need? What skills and knowledge, etc., to join your team as an animator? It kind of depends on like the role, like what specific animation role we'd be looking for. Right now, I don't think we have any animation roles available, but you can go to our careers page, and let me pull that up really quickly. Share this thing. Window. Nope, wrong window. Chrome tab. That's it. Boom. So down here at the bottom, you can find our careers page, and that'll bring you to our Notion doc where we keep track of all the open positions. And then you can see, you know, what exactly the experience we'd be looking for. And one thing that you may be concerned about is like Rive experience. That's not necessarily a deal breaker. We feel like, you know, Rive is something that you can learn, and shouldn't be a blocker for you to be working with Rive. So, okay. Oh, this is an interesting question. Why are we not celebrating our 10K subscribers on our YouTube channel?
Whoa, that's exciting.
So I'll be honest with you. The YouTube like numbers are weird. We've all been looking forward to this. But sometimes it'll show us at like 9,998 subscribers. And then in some places it'll show us at 10,000. So we don't know if it's official yet or not. But if it is, hey, we made it. Thanks to all of you guys. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, we love to see like the participation and recurrent people coming back to learn more about Rive, whether it's from a design perspective, learning more in the editor, or learning something about runtimes. Super cool to have you guys. So thank you all.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And speaking of which, we do have another live stream coming up workshop coming up in 2 weeks. I don't know what's going to be involved in that because I will not be here.
Better come up with something then here in the next couple of weeks, right?
I guess so.
I'll be watching from the beach with a pina colada or something.
Nice. Oh man, that sounds so good.
I was thinking of just putting together a video montage of Robert from various YouTube videos and just have that play for an hour maybe. That'd be kind of a nice, enjoyable experience. So.
We all know that the best movies have a power montage in the middle. So that'll be great. Yeah.
Love it.
It'll just be root group. Root group.
I love it. Actually, I love it. That's what the next workshop's going to be on, root groups.
And I'll ignore it half the time, but I'm kidding. I'm getting better.
I guess we can give it another minute or two and see what kind of questions we have come in.
I think we need like a find the cat game now after 2 weeks ago workshop with Laura.
I agree. I feel like we've been a little doggist here,
Yeah.
and the cat owners need some love.
Yeah, Laura, you did so good with that one. Like, I have friends who came up and were just like, "Oh my gosh, who made that one?" And yeah, it was super cool.
Oh, I'll plug. We do have, so aside from the workshop, we will have another Rive live stream on Tuesday of next week at 9 Pacific, I believe. So 11 Central, and then all the other, I can't do math, so I'm not going to rattle off all the other times throughout the world. But yeah, that'll be talking about all things Rive and having a good time. So make sure to check that out.
Cool.
Nice.
I actually think that this might be a good idea. A little collaborative project going on. Do it live.
That'd be fun.
We've actually talked about doing that, so
maybe that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it sounds like I don't think we have any other questions coming in, so we could probably wrap it up here. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hopefully this was super helpful. Again, you can check out the links below in the YouTube description box to find the source code for the project that we built today. If you want to extend it, do something with wind. That would be amazing. And you can also check out the actual design assets that Michael and Robert built in that community file. You can preview in Rive and check out, how they built some things like the clouds and the rain and things like that. So, yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and I guess we'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.